Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Motivational Millennial podcast. Today we are talking with singer, songwriter, and just really nice person, Jessy Tomsko.
Agreed.
She's lovely and so thoughtful about personal development, music, and really persisting in the pursuit of your dream and your passion. So we're excited for you to hear the episode. Be sure to stick around afterwards for the after show, where Ivy and I will share some of our biggest takeaways from the conversation, and you'll get to hear one of Jessy's awesome songs. So we hope you enjoy.
Hooray!
Hello, welcome to the Motivational Millennial podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Blake Brandis.
And I'm Ivy LeClaire.
Our motivational millennial guest today is Jessy Tomsko. Jessy is a folk and pop singer-songwriter hailing from Philadelphia and currently based in New York City. Known for her catchy yet genuine and confessional style, Jessy is a versatile vocalist, guitarist, and pianist, and she has shared the stage with an impressive list of notable artists like Joan Osborne, Edwin McCain, and Loudon Wainwright. Jessy was also a founding member of the New York City pop a cappella group, The Lost Keys, Go Keys, was a featured vocalist on the recent Book of Rounds by an acclaimed indie pop group, The October Project, and she sings regularly at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Jessy, thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, well, we are so excited to have you. Little context, I met Jessy back in the day when I was just auditioning for an up-and-coming a cappella group in New York City called The Lost Keys, and Jessy was a founding member, and I recall doing a little freestyle rap for her. And
it was amazing. You actually came to see us, Blake, on our first day of auditions, and I think you might have been our first vocal percussionist too, and you proceeded to freestyle about the three of us, and our jaws were on the floor.
Amazing. Well, speaking of jaw-dropping, your singing is phenomenal, and we'd love to hear more about what you're up to right now and what you love so much about it.
Okay, well, a couple things going on right now that I wanted to talk about. I'm currently in the studio. I'm working on a new record. It's called Wild and Good. Obviously love being in the studio. I love my producer, Michael McCoy. We've done a bunch of stuff together over the years, like 4 or 5 years I've been working with him. And we just kind of get each other and we work so well together. And, it's just a great pairing. And I love being in the studio. I feel so creative and I love hearing these songs grow from the time that I write them to the time when they're finished and mixed and mastered. So it's a wonderful process that I never get tired of. I'm actually writing a musical currently, which is I don't want to say it's in the early stages because I've been working on it since maybe June. So I guess like 4 months or so. And I've been loving the research process. I've completed about half of the songs for the first act. So it's kind of a new thing for me, but I was super inspired. And I'll leave the plot as a mystery for right now. I don't want to give too much away, but
I was going to ask, is it the next Hamilton? Is that what you're doing, Jessy? Are you... a historical rap-based musical?
Actually, no, but it is my personal take on a quite famous historical incident in a group of people. That's as much as I'll say.
Oh. I love musicals about when the first cavemen found fire. That's really my favorite historical event. I'm sorry to ruin the surprise, but Prometheus, the musical, is really what we need.
Oh man, what a good idea. I should have thought of that first.
So what inspired you to write a musical?
I've always loved musical theater from the time I was a little girl, and I did a lot of it growing up through, high school and a little bit into college. But I love listening to it. I love seeing it. And I've kind of always been tempted by the idea of writing something in the musical theater genre. I was inspired to do it when I got into a couple of musical theater groups earlier this year through a place called the Musical Theater Factory that I've done some writing for, and so I finally felt like I really wanted to give it a try. It's been really fun. Mostly, I'm still doing a lot of research on this particular plot that I'm writing about, and it's been super enlightening and really fun. So
How has that made you think differently about your creative process from just traditional songwriting?
I've found now that I really like when I have a goal in mind, something that I'm writing about, when I know going into it exactly what I want to get across. When I write sometimes, randomly, I kind of feel like I just kind of start and hopefully it'll go well. And hopefully I'll end up with a song that I like, which happens sometimes, but not always. But it's been nice to have this very specific idea to get across in each of these songs. And I kind of want to take that into my personal writing. And I've been doing it because I find that it's very productive to have this goal within every song. So
I relate to that. We've been working on the Remix Your Reality motivational hip hop album, which is nearing completion here. Thanks all my Kickstarter backers. Appreciate you guys and your infinite patience. But yeah, it is a totally different process writing. Here's the topic I want to write about. Here's some of the key points that we want to discuss. Ivy and I mapped out the concept for the album from the beginning. Here are the topics we want to cover. Here are some of the key points. And it's really interesting sort of designing art in a goal-based setting, like you're saying, with a really concrete structure. In some ways, it's very liberating because there is that focus. And sometimes I find like, okay, I'm being so literal here. What is a more interesting way for me to say this thing?
Especially because like some of the songs that I'm writing for this, I want to be able to stand out of context as well. So I don't know. It's been challenging, but also, really fun, obviously.
Have there been any musicals that have been your inspiration or kind of template as you've been writing where you think, wow, if I could do something like the way that they do this, then it would be great?
Yes, absolutely. It would be Anais Mitchell's Hadestown, which is a brand new musical. And so Anais Mitchell is a folk singer I really admire. I think her writing is fabulous. And she wrote what she called a folk opera called Hadestown, which is about the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. And it's set to her with her folk voice. And it was a concept album at first. It was like playing this past summer somewhere in New York. I didn't get to go see it because it was like a short run, but I found that to be so, so inspiring. And it's kind of what I'm sort of doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it whenever you finish up.
It might be a while, but thank you.
So what is the biggest dream that you have achieved so far, and in what ways did you have to grow to achieve it?
I was trying to think about, what specific big dream that I had that I've been able to achieve. And I think overall, my dream has always been to be able to make a living making music in some way. And when I first decided that, I wasn't sure exactly what that looked like, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And luckily, I've been able to achieve that. And I am now a full-time musician, but it's a lot of piecing together, whether I'm doing my own music performing or doing studio musician stuff. I landed some licensing placements. And the day I found out that my music was airing on a few TV shows was like the best day I could think of in recent months. But anyway, because that was a long time goal. But, I teach as well and, just kind of like piecing things together. But I think the biggest way I have been able to achieve that, well, I think maybe it's two things. Trying to adjust how I see myself. And I think I've grown a lot mentally. And I've rather recently, kind of decided to start seeing myself as already successful and keeping my mindset really positive. Throughout most of my life, I'm a very harsh critic of myself. I always have been. I have always kind of measured myself against other people and always believed myself to be inferior, which, kind of sucks. But it's just this mindset that I've always kind of carried with me. And so I've decided to change that rather recently to seeing myself as already being successful and doing what I want to be doing instead of thinking of success as being something in front of me that I'm always trying to get, which isn't to say I don't have goals, because you do want to have goals and things that you're working toward, but it's more of just how you are perceiving yourself at this moment. I've found that to be really kind of enlightening on my journey. And the second thing would be I had to grow in a business sense. seeing myself as a businesswoman was weird at first because I've always been the creative one. When I first embarked on this musical journey, I thought, well, I'll just write the songs and, somebody else can handle the rest. And I realized very quickly that was not gonna happen, and I had to adjust my thinking and again start seeing myself as a business, which was difficult at first and still is. And I've learned a lot over the last 10 years that I've been working out in the field, I guess. But I've learned not to be afraid to approach people and not be afraid to put myself out there. And I would say one of the biggest things is I'm no longer afraid of hearing the word no. I think many people are afraid to pursue a dream because they're just afraid of rejection. They're afraid of many things, but rejection, I think, is very high up on that list. But I've been rejected enough times now to know I can always move past it and I can grow and then either try again or just try something else.
I love what you're saying about, it's like you've experienced rejection multiple times because you're putting yourself out there, and it's led you, or at least maybe in spite of that, you've found this place where you're actually even more positive than before.
Yeah, I think so. You have to be. You have to turn it around.
Yeah.
It's so easy as an artist to just sink down into these depths of this tortured soul. And I don't buy it. I really don't buy it.
So what prompted the shift into looking at yourself as already successful?
I don't know if it was one thing. I'm trying to think if there was one incident. I think it was just probably a collection of things where one day I had this realization that I am doing what I want to do and I am doing things that I love. And isn't that great? And I am trying to just not keep success in the distance. I don't know. It's just, I think I just decided one day to see myself differently. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, absolutely. And I think it speaks to that sometimes we just have awakening moments. Sometimes we're like, where did this thought come from? I don't know, but I like it and it feels right. And this is what I want.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't even know what prompted it. I just realized
what a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so much comparative pressure, especially with social media, to always say, yes, well, I did X, Y, and Z, but look, this other person's already doing that and they're 5 years younger than I am.
It's a losing battle. Mm-hmm. You can't do it. Because you'll always find someone who's doing something that you want to be doing. You always will. And I think it's important to look at what you're doing. Take a moment to stop and look back at all that you have accomplished and be really excited about it. And know that no one else could do that the way that you did it. And I think that we have to stop and remind ourselves frequently of those accomplishments, and otherwise we can get down on ourselves so easily. I know I can, and I do get stuck myself still, but
that's good. That inner critic can really invalidate all of our accomplishments to date. Mm-hmm. In so many different ways. It could say, yeah, but it was just luck, mm-hmm. or yeah, you just happened to meet the right person at the right time and they gave you this opportunity, mm-hmm. or yeah, you worked hard at that, but you didn't work as hard as you could have. There's so many mm-hmm. tricky ways that our inner voice can negate the success. And I love hearing that decision. And also to your point about being okay with rejection, I really admire your determination and persistence, because being a professional musician in New York City is so hard. And you have really, like you said, over 10 years done whatever it took to be making music in some way or another. And I know you've really put in the work in a lot of different areas, both music and non-music.
It didn't happen quick too. I spent many years working all kinds of jobs and doing things that I didn't particularly like doing, but it was always something that I knew was temporary.
Talk more about that.
Oh, jobs. You mean like jobs I've had that I didn't like so much? Or
I'm curious about the mindset that it's temporary, because I think a lot of times there's mm-hmm. this sense of how things are now is how they'll be forever.
Oh, yeah. That's a trap, I think. I mean, even when I was working in places that I didn't like or my life wasn't exactly what I had hoped it would be. Well, I mean, life is always moving, and just because you're doing something now, that's doesn't mean that's going to always be that way unless you decide to always keep it that way or your actions dictate that it stays that way. But I always knew that I was working to something more, and I still am working to something more, even when I felt like I was very far away.
And on that path, was there a major challenge that you faced that you were able to overcome? I'm interested to hear more about some of those struggles.
Well, I mean, one of my big things was I really wanted to work out of, I did a lot of waitressing and bartending, which was, obviously great work. I enjoyed it. I did. But I always wanted to work out of it. And the moment I was able to do that was a huge accomplishment. And it was like a decision. Like I'd been going on, I'd had various jobs for a couple of years. And then one day, I distinctly remember I said it out loud. I said to my friend, I am telling you this now because if I say this out loud, I'm going to stick to it. I was like, in 6 months' time, I'm not going to be working at this job anymore. And do you know, I believe it was about 30 days later, I was not working there anymore and I was doing what I had set out to do. So it was like as soon as I just said it, it meant that it was real and that's what I was working toward, and I couldn't go back once I had confessed it to someone. So, and as far as major significant challenges with the music, obviously, like you said, being a musician in New York is really hard. There are a lot of opportunities, but there are a lot of people going for those same opportunities. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me was finding a place to record my music. And for a really long time, I wasn't recording anything simply because I didn't have any connections. I didn't have thousands of dollars to go to some beautiful studio somewhere. And it was really, really frustrating. But I was able to work through that. I was able to meet my producer through, I don't know if it was, coincidences lined up. I don't know if there's such a thing as coincidences. But anyway, I was able to pull myself through that and make the right connections and find the right space. And I think that if you are earnest and perseverant enough, there will be a door that opens to you. And you just can't stop and accept, well, this is the way it is. So this is the way it will always be. You have to always keep thinking there's got to be a door here somewhere. I have to just find it.
I think it really speaks to your bravery and determination, because I imagine that time frame, not feeling like you had connections or other types of resources, may have felt isolating. That can come up when you're starting to pursue a passion that may be different than your family or your friends or your current circles. And so there's that isolation that comes up. And so it speaks a lot that you kept going and persevered through that experience.
Thank you. I remember distinctly, I was playing one show here in New York. Yeah, it might have been like 5 or 6 years ago. And I said to the audience, so this next song is going to be on a record if I ever end up making a record. So I was really frustrated at one point. So guys, hope you enjoy it. It's a good song, I think. But I don't know.
You may never hear it ever again.
You may never hear it ever again.
The honesty. Which of your accomplishments has surprised you the most? Like you look back at it and you're like, holy mackerel, that happened.
I love this question. I feel like that I could answer this in a lot of ways, but the one that I'm choosing to relate is something that just happened earlier this year. So I mentioned that I have recently begun this foray into musical theater. I felt completely like a total stranger in this musical theater world of New York. It's something that I, enjoy, and I thought maybe I'd one day do, but I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And I went to this event that a friend of mine asked me to perform at, and it was a cabaret show, open mic kind of thing at the Musical Theater Factory here in New York. And he was going to offer me a chance to play a couple of songs. So I went, I was like, cool, I'll just play my songs that I have. And, it went really well. And a couple of weeks later, I got an email from someone who had been there that night, a writer, a playwright from Brazil. And he wanted to meet with me and said that he loved my writing and he wanted to talk about possibly co-writing something. And of course, like right away, I felt this like red flag go up because I was like, co-writing, it scares me. I don't like doing it. I've always felt like co-writing is such a difficult thing for me because I view writing as being a very personal and private thing. And whenever I've tried in the past, I have tried a couple of times to co-write. It's just never really worked out because I just feel like I'm bad at it. But I was like, okay, well, I'll meet with you and we'll talk. And so we met and I loved his ideas for what he wanted to work on. And so I agreed to co-write and write the music and the lyrics for it, and not really knowing what I was getting myself into. And like a week later, he emailed me and he's like, oh, so I think I want to submit our work to this new like performance series at the factory. And I was like, what? I haven't even written anything yet. And he's like, the deadline is this Sunday. Can you do something for the opening song? And I was like, sure. So, but I hadn't written a word, not nothing. But I scrambled and I did it and we submitted and we got picked to showcase at this series called the 4x15s. They choose 4 new writers to present 15 minutes of their new work. It's like 20 minutes if we're being real, maybe 25, but that's they call it the 4x15s. So we got picked to do it, and all of a sudden we had this big deadline looming where we had to do, I think it was like 4 scenes, which was about 4 songs with musical transitions. We had to cast it. We had to teach the music and like block it and perform it inside of like a couple of weeks. And we hadn't even like written all of it yet. And so I was scrambling. I had to teach myself how to use Finale, which is this sheet music, the sheet music program, which I had never used before because I had always handwritten everything. And Blake can attest to that. You remember, Blake, when I brought in that arrangement to Lost Keys and it was like all handwritten?
Yes.
Everyone was like, what are you doing?
It was like in pencil. It was like, Jessy, like, she's like, no worries, we can just make photocopies.
but I was like, that's not going to do for these professional actors that we're getting to come do this. Like, I can't give them a handwritten sheet. So
it's very Shakespearean of you, Yeah. Here's the folio for tonight, kids.
My feather pen with my inkwell. Yes. Anyway, so I figured it out, and somehow, like, we cast it. I taught the music. We had 2 full cast rehearsals before we put it up in front of a full house at the factory. And I remember I was like stressing because it was a lot of work and I didn't know if it was good. I didn't know how it was going to be received. Everyone seemed to enjoy singing it, so that was good. People liked the music. And so then we did the performance, and I played piano for the actors that night. And I mean, there were some hiccups here and there, of course. We had 2 rehearsals, but it was so wonderful, and it was so thrilling to hear these great singers singing something that I had written, which was a first for me. I had never written for other voices and arranged for people to sing my stuff. And it was such a cool departure from anything else I'd ever done. And it was well received, and I was so proud of myself. And I still like think back on it, or I watch the videos and I'm like, wow, I wrote that. That's crazy. That sounds nothing like anything else I've ever written. But it was so cool to know that I had that within me, and it made me really curious to see what else I could do.
Well, let's take a moment to celebrate. Yay! Sometimes we're like, yeah, that was cool and that was so great, but congratulations. I'm so happy. That was such a great story.
Thank you.
and a great example, too, of how sometimes a compressed deadline can really force us to expand our concept of what's possible for ourselves and what we're capable of.
And I've decided that I work really well with deadlines. I didn't know that about myself, but I do.
Yeah, especially if it's something that you really love, like that you really want to do and create.
Mm-hmm. So that was a cool experience.
That's excellent. And I also want to celebrate one of your accomplishments that we didn't mention in the intro, but you recently won a Teacher of the Year award for your music teaching.
I did.
Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you. I do teach. I teach private lessons. I teach at 2 schools, like after school programs. And one of them was kind enough to give me a little party. And a couple of my students performed for me, and it was so sweet. And yeah, I love teaching. I've been doing it for years. From working with kids, what a fulfilling thing it is to see people, I mean, of all ages, because I work with people of all ages, discover things within themselves that they didn't know was there and reach these goals and exceed their potential. It's incredibly fulfilling. I love teaching. I get to work with people, students of all ages from all walks of life. And I feel like I've learned a lot from my students, and I think I've grown musically from teaching.
Well, and having taken a couple of lessons from Jessy, I can attest that I have grown. Yeah, but you may not even remember that.
I did that.
But yeah, I actually, now you'd be proud of me, Jessy. Now in my hip hop motivational assemblies, I actually do 3 to 4 part harmony on my loop pedal.
It's true. It sounds really good.
Oh, thank you. It's never, operatic and beautiful, but it's functional and on key. So, that's always my baseline is like, are you on pitch? If so.
Hey, that's more than most can do. So there you go.
Well, and I can only do it in limited circumstances and in the key I establish. So.
Very good.
Jessy, what advice would you give to other millennials who are on this journey toward fulfillment and success?
I would say, I think the biggest piece of advice I could give is do not pigeonhole yourself, because it cuts you off from potentially really fulfilling opportunities. Don't say like, this is the way I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do, and I have no flexibility. Be open to different avenues, even though it might not look how you envisioned or how you planned when you started. Don't be afraid to venture down some unknown road, because you really can surprise yourself with what you accomplish. And you'll, I think most importantly, always be grateful for the people that you meet along the way. So that being said, I would also say learning to prioritize is key. And you have to also not be afraid to say no when it's called for. Because I know I'm a people pleaser, and I want everyone to like me, and I want to do everything. And I fancy myself kind of like this jack of all trades sometimes. I've had to learn, what is most important to me right now and what can I live without for right now. And I think that was a lesson that I learned. Learn to say no, because sometimes if you take on too much, unless it's something that you feel, very curious about and you want to like table for later. But I would caution against taking on too much or too many different things at one time, because it can lead to the production of not great work. So it's a little bit of a paradox. Like, you want to be open to everything and try new things, but also know when you have enough on your plate at the moment, so that's the priority thing is something that I am constantly having to remind myself of, because I want to do everything, but I can't always. So.
Yeah. And I think sometimes recognizing that you can try something without having to devote yourself to it forever.
Yes,
sometimes there's this feeling like, oh, I can't, take a singing lesson because then I'll have to become a singer and I'll have to practice 7 times a day or whatever. And you're like, no, just like try. You might actually enjoy it and have fun with it.
Yeah,
and I know I'm guilty of that sometimes too, where I think, oh yeah, I'd like to try this new thing, like eating something different for dinner one night. But then, oh my gosh, I have to prepare it and think about it. Then what if my whole life has to change? You're like, no, just like put 3 ingredients in a pot together. Like, it's not that hard. You're not committing.
Very good point. Yeah, you're totally right.
No, that's good.
It also reminds me of what you were saying earlier about how you wanted music to be your life, and how one of your achievements is being able to make money with music. And having the mindset that you have about being open to the way that looks is what has allowed you to create this life, because you have created, you are making money through music in multiple different ways. But if you had come into it thinking it has to look exactly this way, then maybe the life that you're living right now would not have been possible.
Yeah, I might have limited myself a lot. So you're totally right. Yeah.
And it sounds like that was how you even got into music theater. Creating it was you were open to that possibility of collaboration in a way you normally wouldn't have wanted to pursue.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I get very scared when someone says the word co-write. I get very because I don't know if I'm good at it. But you just have to try, because you don't know until you try.
Would you share a book or a quote that changed the direction of your life?
Sure. I would say it's a pretty recent book, actually. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
Love it.
I generally love her. I mean, I could have said Eat, Pray, Love, but like everyone would say that. I do love that book. I am guilty of reading it about 10 times at this point in my life. But I mean, I love everything she writes. I've read all her books and short stories. I think she's a phenomenal writer. But in Big Magic, I feel like she writes so beautifully about inspiration and creativity. And I recommended it to so many people, not just creative types or artistic friends of mine, anybody who feels like some inkling or curiosity about something that maybe they're afraid to start. And I found that the whole book has resonated so much with me that I keep going back to it over and over when I'm feeling stuck or I just need a little kick in the pants. I want to read a certain paragraph again. So I love that book. And I feel like she just talks about creating just for the sake of creating, of making your art and then sharing that art with an open heart and, you know, come what may. And I just love that whole mentality. So I would recommend that book to anyone, anywhere.
I'm really curious to know more about the piece of how it changed this direction of your life. Like, what changed in your life as a result of having read this?
You know, I think that actually might be the moment that you asked about what made me change my thinking about myself and seeing myself as successful and good right now and not sometime in the future. I think it might have coincided with reading that book, with reading Big Magic, because of the way, like I said, she talks about being just creating all the time just for the sake of creating and seeing that just the effort that you make as being successful. And, you know, maybe I didn't get my song on the radio today, but I wrote a verse and chorus of a new song, you know, and being like that's great. I am happy with that. And she celebrates the little successes, which I think is very important to continually moving forward. And I think that might have, reading this book, I think it might have been what kind of made things shift in my head of look at what I'm doing right now. And I don't need to change who I am. I don't need to be like someone else because I'm doing what I'm doing in the way that only I can do it. And she really, you know, obviously elaborates upon those ideas in the book. But yeah, it's extremely enlightening.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Has there been a moment where you've ever felt like on the edge of just everything coming tumbling down? And the reason I ask in this specific context is because I know you're saying that with the shapeshifter thing, being able to piece together a lot of different pieces. But have you ever felt like there was a moment or a time frame when like everything was on the verge, all those pieces falling apart? Or did you always
like every other month?
That's always reassuring to hear. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through it, but yeah, I know sometimes I think it could be like, oh my gosh, how is this all going to work out?
Yeah, maybe not that often, but I would say at least like a couple times a year, maybe every quarter. Maybe around like tax time. those moments when I'm feeling like the weight of it all. Those are good times, I think, to step away a bit and look back and remember that it's always worked out before and it will work out this time. You'll find a way. You always do.
I love that.
Help always comes, even when you don't expect it to.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today with us. Will you share with the audience where they can find out more about you and your work?
Sure. You can go to my website, which is jessytomskomusic.com. You can find me on Facebook, Jessy Tomsko, and, you know, all the usual suspects, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, YouTube. If you just look for Jessy Tomsko, you'll find it. You can also sign up for my mailing list on my website and also on my Reverb Nation page. And hopefully I will see you at a show sometime.
Yes, I highly recommend people check out Jessy live. It is an amazing experience. And speaking of your awesome music, Would it be okay if we played In February as the outro on this show? That's like my favorite song of yours. I know you have newer songs that are coming out soon, and we'll definitely...
No, I'm flattered. Yes, of course.
Oh, thank you. Well, we'll put that so our audience can hear, even though this episode will come out before February. Right. But it'll be a good little preview of the feelings that we're going to feel when we are in February.
Amazing.
Didn't you do vocal percussion once for me on that song, Blake?
I did.
I think you did. At Arlene's Grocery.
Yes, good memory. It was a little unusual because it's sort of this lovely, calm folk song. But hey, it even benefited from a little extra beatboxing on it.
It totally did.
I'm so excited. I turned 30 in February.
Yay! We'll celebrate that too.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jessy.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much. This was really a treat.
Though I know it's time, it's not so easy, 'cause when you put your hand in mine, I'm getting dizzy when I kiss you goodbye, my love. Mm-hmm.
The Motivational Millennial podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Coaching Services. We help you find clarity and confidence so you can take action toward living your dream life. To learn more about one-on-one personalized support from someone who believes you have a path to fulfillment and wants to help you uncover it, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/coaching.
Hello and welcome to the after show of our conversation with Jessy Tomsko. You were just listening to In February, which is one of Jessy's many awesome songs.
It's beautiful, and her voice is so beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Ivy was saying it sounds like butter, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's just so smooth and natural. Yeah, it's just amazing.
No, it was a real honor and a privilege to get to sing with Jessy for a number of years with the Lost Keys. That was really a great experience. And we had a lovely experience of a conversation with Jessy on the show.
Yeah, it was so great because you could tell at the very beginning, before we even started talking, that she was like really ready and prepared, and it was just really fun to have a conversation with her because she was just like really like excited about talking about all these questions that we had. It was really fun.
Yeah, she has some great wisdom in addition to her musical skills. So one of the things I really liked about her journey that she shared with us is her persistence and her real belief in what was possible for her. And I know she mentioned a major transition point of acting as if she was already successful, because she is. But I think even if that was only conscious for her later, after a lot of the self-criticism, somewhere deep inside her, I think she must have known from the beginning at least enough to hold on to the dream. Because you think about working, as a bartender and all these other jobs just to get by year after year to pursue your dream. That takes some real dedication and courage, and I believe somewhere deep inside a knowledge that this is the thing you were meant to do. And I think she really has demonstrated that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we're totally honest, in our culture, we don't always see that as a positive thing. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that you are highlighting it as a positive thing, meaning there's such vision and an understanding of what she was wanting to do, which is create music and have music in her life, that these other roles were in support of that. It actually reminds me of Big Magic, which came up in the conversation as Jessy's influential book. That's one of the things that Liz Gilbert talks about, not having the expectation that whatever her art or creation is going to support her financially. Meaning it's not the art's job. like if that happens, that's great. And she has a very interesting relationship with her art and creation and creativity. In her mind, that's not part of the deal necessarily. It's not a requirement. She's going to support her art, but doesn't expect her art to support her. So I really appreciate that you're highlighting that as a positive.
Yeah, because so often I think we judge success by the ultimate outcome. as we define it in a certain place. So if you are a successful musician, quote unquote, you are living off your art full time. And by definition there, if you haven't yet reached the place where your art is supporting you full time, then you're not successful. And that obviously is all semantics, but I think it can be really easy to internalize that message, and other people might not see your own journey and path in that way or support you, because it's like, okay, yeah, well, you've got this dream and this vision, but is it paying your bills right now? And I'm not sure that's the standard that we need to judge everyone's journey by.
Yeah, that can be especially difficult when we have those messages from our close friends or family, because it's already hard enough to go out and pursue what you really care about. It's not only hard from a societal standpoint, but it's also hard from an internal standpoint. Like, you're already having to fight your own internal self-sabotaging thoughts. So that is really challenging. And it's funny that you brought up the success thing, because actually that was what I wanted to talk about in the after show, about how she has shifted into thinking of success as happening now. Like, in what ways is she successful today just by creating music, being involved in music, teaching music, having music as a huge part of her life? And I think that's incredibly important for a number of reasons. One is that if we always see success as in the future, like you said, like, we're going to reach some imaginary goal that then we're going to be set for life. One, if you're set for life, creatives are going to be bored as hell anyway. Like, you're not going to be fulfilled because you're fulfilled by creating. But two, that day is unlikely to come. That day where we have that one thing that we created that now we're billionaires. It's not everyone, but after you're billionaires, then what do? You have to figure out what to do with all your money. So, you know, there's never going to be a moment where you're not working on something, creating something, doing something, moving forward. And so if success is always outside of you, there's going to be a discontent. There's going to be feeling like maybe you're not good enough, or all of these unhappy ways of feeling and being that are really not necessary. Like, you go your whole life feeling that way, basically.
That's true. And you're pointing out that self-definition is the real key there, because you can decide that you are where you want to be right now, and that becomes true for you. Or you can decide where you need to be is far away or in the future or external to yourself. And I think that's a really hard place to believe deep down, because so much of the messaging all around us is reinforcing this idea that success equals fame or monetary wealth or some other standard. And if you're not hitting that, you're not inherently successful or valuable. So to our listeners, I would say, whatever it is that you are feeling is outside of yourself, that is a definition of success, I would ask you if there's some way that you can look at yourself as successful right now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever stage in life you are, questions you have unanswered or things you have left to accomplish, not to somehow become complacent or overly comfortable, but to be affirmed and enjoy the path you're on. To your point, there's going to be plenty of external factors that are going to be challenging us along the way. Is there a way that right now you can look at your life and where you are and say, for this reason, this is a success? Do you disagree, Ivy?
No, why? Did I have a weird look on my face?
Oh, I didn't know. I was uncertain.
No, absolutely. I was actually just thinking about how one of the ways to do that, I mean, you have to start by understanding in a way what success is for you. Defining what is success, you know, and sometimes if we're in like a really low place, success is like putting clothes on today. That's and like right. Going, you know, like, so I think it's important to understand what success is. And one of the ways that you can do that is to think about what your values are, what you would be really sad about not having anymore in your life, what you want more of in your life, just so that you have kind of a compass too. Because the point is to define success by your own terms and not by cultural terms. Because the reality is that particularly, I mean, I cannot speak for people who are raised in other national cultures, but I can speak to the American national culture. And that is work harder, make more money. That's really important. And in the American national culture, sometimes we have a habit of forgetting that there are other cultures and other ways of thinking about life that exist outside of America. We forget that some cultures have meals that last 3 hours and they're just chilling and talking and it's totally great and wonderful, right? And that's a very small example, but it's just to remember that the cultural expectations that are around us are a choice.
Yeah, it's all constructed.
It's all constructed.
Which is why if anyone ever has the chance to study cultural anthropology, I highly recommend it.
Travel.
And travel, that's right. That's right. There are plenty of ways to just read a book, talk to someone on the internet. But it's true, I think, expanding your experience of cultural norms, or even just looking at them, and so many of the things we assume are the way they are, or are the way they have to be, are all constructed and reinforced. Mm-hmm. And that is liberating, really.
Yeah.
As soon as we start really analyzing, why do I do this? Why do I eat goldfish every day?
like the crackers.
Right. Not a live goldfish. That would be horrible. My gosh. What a terrible human. No, anyone who knows me knows I'm an enthusiastic goldfish consumer, but you, kind listener, may not know that I have a passion for Pepperidge Farm goldfish. So all I'd say, they clearly did some good marketing, either to my parents or myself or us as a family unit sometime in my early childhood. And from then on, I just think of goldfish as part of lunch when I think of lunch. And so if I really deconstruct that, I think, wow, I have been the recipient of successful marketing by Pepperidge Farm, that they caught me early and it's continued on. But all that to say, we're not here trying to sell goldfish, but I do highly recommend them. They're a delicious, cheesy, cheddary snack that you can't get overseas. And I'm not just shilling for a sponsorship. All right. Thank you for letting me digress. Okay. No, the real...
I think what you're pointing out, though, is that it would be even more insidious if not only there was a marketing and all of these things were influencing you, but it would be much worse if all of your peers growing up were like, where are your goldfish?
Yeah.
Why do you not have goldfish? Why do you not have as many goldfish as me? Or you have too many goldfish.
Yeah, you have the pizza ones. You're inferior. My goodness.
The even subconscious patterning, if people just were randomly not hanging out with you, and then you find out 3 years later is because you didn't eat enough goldfish, you know what I mean, or something, and this is what we are experiencing as humans in culture, all of these pressures that are subconscious that we are pressuring other people, mm-hmm. and we don't even notice that we're doing it. So it's even more subversive than just a commercial or a marketing campaign. It's we are reinforcing it with each other.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this sound like a terrible thing or some vast conspiracy. If you think about it from an evolutionary biology perspective, we needed to have social harmony when we were in our early evolutionary days to survive. And so there was a real value and premium placed on having a social order that was cohesive, that had a set array of values that people upheld, and when people weren't upholding them, they were corrected and brought back in line into the fold to survive as a species. Mm-hmm. So I think it's part of our biology, which is why psychologically we tend to gravitate, whatever our culture is, to aligning with whatever those values we've grown up with, or rebelling against them, defining ourselves in opposition to them. So, Jessy, we have gone so far off the rails of talking about you and your music, but I hope we
love you.
Yes, we love you, and we hope you are accepting and on this journey with us.
Absolutely. Well, I think that have a sufficient after show now. What do you think?
We've talked about goldfish for at least 3 minutes, so that fulfills my quota for the day.
So again, we just want to express gratitude to you for listening and for being here and supporting this amazing community. Thank you so much.
For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis.
Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!